evening, everyone. I'd like to call our planning meeting on April 10th to session. Call to order. We did have a need for executive session beforehand to discuss personnel and discipline. And with that, we'll go to the pledge. Keith?
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Mr. Mummer, if you call roll call, please.
Mrs. Bauer.
Here.
Mr. Beard.
Here.
Mrs. Brennan.
Here.
Mr. Galzella.
Here.
Mr. Gelsinger.
Here.
Mr. Leidy.
Here.
Mr. Plessick. Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Weaver.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Additions, we have a stack of people here. I'd like to recognize we have a decent size, and we'll get to them in a minute. Additions, deletions, modifications to the agenda. Anyone? No? Okay, seeing none. Hearing persons who wish to address the board, the first section is related to agenda items. Mr. Dan Puz.
Hey, my name is Dan. I'm a parent of 3 students, and I would just like to pray for tonight for a great session and for just our district in general. We thank you so much, Father, for teaching us that regardless of what we believe or how we were brought up, that we should respect each other and treat each other with that same respect. As a parent and as a part of this community, I can confidently say what we all want is what's best. And although we may have disagreements about that, I pray that we are able to see the best in each other this evening, and that we're able to, with wisdom and clarity and confidence, make good decisions moving forward, that people are heard, that agenda items are discussed well, but most importantly, that this meeting tonight represents what we want it to represent to our school district, to our community, and definitely to our students as well. And so we thank you and we pray these things. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Puz. Ashley, is it Magana? Magana.
I'm just bring this down a minute. Tilt the top.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Ashley Magana, and for some exposition here, I am the child of 2 immigrants. My mother is a naturalized citizen, meaning she's a legal citizen of the United States. My late father, however, was not. However, they were both hard workers, starting off doing jobs that most of us in this room would not even consider. The American Immigration Council states that immigrants support the U.S. economy in many ways, accounting for 22.2% of entrepreneurs, 22.8% of STEM workers, and 15.2% of nurses. As of 2021, immigrants made up over 17% of the American workforce, consisting of almost 29 million workers, and almost 4% of the American workforce consists of undocumented immigrants. My mother's hardworking attitude inspired me. I'm an active member of the community as I am a part of the workforce. I am the treasurer of the National Art Honor Society. I'm an intermittent member of our high school's diversity club, and I participate in theater. I am on the honor roll and am college bound. All of these things I was able to accomplish with an access to an education, something my mother worked so hard to provide for me and my siblings. We were all born in the U.S., which allowed us to have automatic citizenship, along with our mother being a U.S. citizen. However, we did not choose this. We did not choose our place of birth or whether or not our parents would have citizenship. And imagine for a second if we were not given this opportunity. There is no way for a minor to obtain citizenship otherwise. Section 320 of the Immigration and Nationality Act provides that children under U.S. citizenship, provides that children acquire U.S. citizenship if they satisfy the certain requirements before age 18, which include have at least one U.S. citizen parent by birth or naturalization, be admitted to the United States as an immigrant or lawful permanent residence. A child cannot control have control over their citizenship status, and it would be unlawful and unethical for our public school district to deny any child education based on something that the child would be unable to control. The Pennsylvania Department of Education states that school districts or charter schools may never ask the family of the child or the parents for immigration documents during enrollment or any other time, but they may ask for proof of residency. Just like race, gender, and disabilities, we must move past denying students an education based on these uncontrollable aspects of their lives. And though I understand your growing concerns as the population of undocumented immigrants rises and the redirection of our taxpayer money is made, yet there is a glaring fault in that argument. The American Immigration Council states that often lost in political and policy debates about undocumented immigrants is a simple yet crucial fact. Undocumented immigrants pay taxes. Like everyone else in the United States, they pay sales tax. They also pay property taxes, even if they rent. And that the best evidence suggests that 50% of undocumented immigrant households currently file income tax returns using an individual tax identification number. And many who do not file income tax returns still have taxes deducted from their paychecks. In 2021, undocumented immigrants in the US paid over $30 billion in taxes. By already proving residency, they prove that they contribute to paying property tax, whether they rent or own a home. This cannot be treated as just a financial burden. This is a moral issue that will affect real people, real children, those who are between obtaining citizenship and their ability to succeed in the future, and those who will need to acquire citizenship later in life. And so I implore you, the members of our school board and otherwise, to please reconsider your stance on Policy 200, enrollment of students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dave Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Dave Anderson. I am a long-term resident of Southwest School District. I am a taxpayer, and we were the proud parents of a daughter who graduated from Southwest, and we could not have been happier with the staff, the administration, and past school boards. However, I am concerned with some of the things that we have observed over the last few months dealing with this Board of Education. The tone and rhetoric of meetings that we have attended is shocking. Attacks against our public library, the YWCA, and our past superintendent of schools is just uncalled for. The threats of possible consequences for teachers sends a message of distrust to our wonderful teaching staff. I fear that we are going to be losing some of our outstanding teachers and administrators to other school districts because of what is happening. I'd also like to address the elementary school classroom libraries. I am a retired elementary school teacher. I taught in a neighboring school district for 39 years. In my classroom, like many other classrooms probably here in Southwest, I had a collection of hundreds and hundreds of books. I bought many of the books myself. I received gifts from students at Christmas and other holidays. I attended book fairs and received books. I even went to some workshops and received free books. I felt that these books were appropriate for the age groups that I taught. Over my 39 years, I only had one complaint from a teacher about a book I had. It was a book about facts about presidents. The teacher was concerned because it talked about John Quincy Adams skinny dipping in Potomac River. That was definitely scandalous at the time. I think it's impossible to ask our elementary teachers to monitor what books children are reading. It cannot be done in an elementary school. They have too many other things that they are required to do, too many other tasks. If I were a teacher in Southwest today and this policy came about, I would be packing up my library in boxes, and they would be sent out of my classroom. I would not have a classroom library, which really would be, detrimental to our students, but that's the way I feel it would happen. I'd also like to just quickly address the prayer part of our meetings. I thought that was public comments based on the agenda. In due respect, I am a Christian. I believe there is a time and a place for prayer. In my opinion, it should be private. I, along with others that are here, feel uncomfortable with prayers during the public comment time of the meetings. I have no problem with prayers being given before or after the gavel, or if there would be a moment of silence after the Pledge of Allegiance. But I just think it's inappropriate to have it during public comment time. We're not the Lone Catholic. We're not the Christian School of York. We are a public school district. In conclusion, I will privately pray that the members of this Board of Education make the right decisions for all Southwest students, staff, and taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. We're on to Mrs. Anderson.
My name's Helga Anderson. I've also been a resident and taxpayer of Southwestern District for 35 years. We originally moved to the area because we were impressed with the school district, and our daughter did have an excellent education and experience from first grade through graduation. I would like to speak about an issue that was introduced at the last meeting under Policy 200, Enrollment of Students. The issue of immigration and enrollment of students was introduced for the first time to my knowledge. Both federal and state laws clearly address this issue. The federal law through a Supreme Court ruling in Filer versus Doe, and the state law in 22 Pennsylvania Code 11.11d, where it states, and I quote, "A child's right to be admitted to school may not be conditioned on the child's immigration status. A school may not inquire regarding the immigration status of a student as part of the admission process," end quote. A school board should not consider instituting a policy that is against the law. Whether or not you believe in the law is not at issue. It is the law. Your own policy states, quote, that you will stay within legal requirements set by federal, state, and/or local government, and that board policies shall be consistent with law, end quote. Your proposal for this policy, the 216.2 student records policy, and the 123.1 sex-based distinctions in athletics policy do not follow the law or your own policies. We teach our children to follow laws, such as not taking things from stores without paying, and to follow speed limits. We can't just ignore laws that we don't like. Not only would you be making an illegal policy, but you would also be requiring school personnel to break the law by asking the immigration status of prospective students. I think that's unconscionable. It is my belief that the majority of the taxpayers who you represent are law-abiding citizens and would also expect you to follow the law. Policy 200 is not the first time that a policy has been proposed which does not follow the law. I attended the meeting on March 13th, where during discussion of Policy 216.2 student records, your own solicitor clearly stated that the policies that you are proposing could result in legal action. Although that statement has been struck from the minutes, there were enough people in attendance that it will not be forgotten. I do have to question your transparency for striking it from the minutes. Your response to the concerns expressed was that you have found a pro bono attorney to represent you for these causes. Has it crossed your mind that you could lose the lawsuit? Having a pro bono attorney does not guarantee a win by any means. Enacting a policy against the law costs the Dover School District over $1 million. You may not be charged for your representation, but if you lose, and that is a likely scenario, the school district will have to pay the damages as well as the legal fees for the plaintiffs. I do not believe that your pro bono attorneys will pay those costs. If that happens, you might have to cut school programs and raise school taxes. I do not believe that as a school board, you are above the law, nor do I believe that it is appropriate to teach our children and students to ignore laws. As a school board, you should be setting a good example for the students. If you do not agree with the current laws, try to change them through the appropriate channels rather than willfully break them. The taxpayers deserve to have representation that respects and adheres to the law. We should not be put in a situation where we could be involved in a lawsuit and end up with increased taxes. You cannot guarantee a win in court. I would also like to remind you that Southwestern is a public school, which means all schools are welcome, all students are welcome, supported, and educated. If you believe that some students don't belong in our schools or cannot work under this constraint, then maybe you need to reconsider your position on the board. I respectfully request that as school board members, you follow the federal and state laws as well as your own policies and not pursue any changes which are against the law in the enrollment of students, student records, and sex-based distinctions in athletics policies. Thank you.
All right, that's the entirety of people wishing to speak on the agenda-related items.
Can we respond to any comments?
Yes, anyone will respond?
Mrs. Anderson, correct? I just want to clarify one thing. You made a statement about the one policy, policy 200, that's never been in our school. I just looked it up. It was adopted December 21st of 2016.
No, not the policy, the issue of the asking for immigration status of students.
Okay. All right. Well, that didn't get on that policy, but that policy's been in existence.
I know
For
that
7
has
years.
been, but
Okay.
it was the-
All right. This ain't a back and forth. It's just my comment to you. Thank you.
I did want to likewise comment, we agree on the rule of law. That's what I was referencing when I said if a person's in this country illegally, they are breaking the law. I never said we were going to operate in contravention of the current law. What I suggest is we table it so I can examine what the law says. Thank you. Unless anyone else has any other comments?
There are 9 members on this board, and all 9 members of this board say different things. So please don't misrepresent something said as every single member of this board. That's all I have to say on that.
And with that, I'm going to turn the floor back to you, Mr. Smith, for 8A1.
I'm making a motion to approve 8A1. I'll do these 3 sections separately, so 8A1 first.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Gelsinger. Any discussion? Seeing none?
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
I'm now making a motion to approve 8A2.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Leidy. Discussion.
I would just like to say that on a visit to Park Hills, we had the honor of visiting Mrs. Hernandez's autistic support class and very much appreciated her time and interaction, the way she dealt with her autistic support students. And I think that she's a great asset to the district.
And just for clarification, all 3 of these are takebacks from the LIU that's already been budgeted, correct? Just so everyone in the public knows that.
So they can hear at home? Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm on the microphone.
No, I didn't,
Oh,
that's not my
okay.
response.
All right.
So we're employing them instead of the LIU? That's what we're doing here?
Did you want to take with transfer of entity? Explain that.
Yes, that is correct. We have a transfer of entity from the LIU because we're taking back the programs, and we have offered these positions to them to become employed by Southwestern and not by the IU.
And just for clarity, LIU is no longer conducting those services, right? They're not
For
offering
us.
For
us.
us,
for us.
correct.
So they ended it, which is why we've done the take back.
Nope.
Right. Right.
Yeah, we have ended it because we believe that we can provide an equal and even better program for less cost.
Not only less cost, but also less travel time for the students that, would have to travel the whole way in a van, the whole way to the LIU, depending on which facility with LIU. So there's multiple reasons why those were taken back, so.
There will be additional, I think there's 2 additional that we weren't able to meet with prior to this evening's meeting, and they would be at the next meeting, and that would complete that transfer to our district.
Can I just ask a generic question of what's the rationale that we've been dragging these out and it wasn't just one lump sum? Is it something procedural? Like, why aren't the rest of them on here now? Like, is there, because it's contracts with the teachers? Is it?
No, I just didn't have a chance to meet with them ahead of time to go over what the
Okay.
salary and benefits would be prior to the 24 hours to post it on the agenda.
Okay.
It was nothing, it was just timing.
Okay.
So briefly, I have a comment on this. We discussed this prior. As we expand our special ed department, I'm going to again reiterate the need for a specific psychologist dedicated to behavioral support evaluations prior to expanding our department. Whereas these were already budgeted, I'm going to reiterate why I'm voting yes on this today, but I intend until we get that dedicated special education personnel to behavioral evaluations, expect to see a no vote from me on any further special education funding until we do so.
Just for clarity purposes, so that I'm understanding you correctly. It's a financial budgeting thing. It is not because you're tying behavioral assessments and psychology to the autistic support rooms in just only because that's what we're voting on right now. So I want to make sure I'm
Right.
I'm
And
understanding.
and
what
that's
you're
why I'm not
separating.
pursuing this, all right?
Right.
This is prior budgeted, but
Right.
I just want to reiterate that my emphasis is special education needs to devote specifically to evaluations for behavioral needs before it expands any further than what we've already agreed to.
Okay, just making sure I understood.
All right, let's go to a vote.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
I'm now making a motion to approve agenda item 8A3.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Gelsinger. Any discussion?
There's no approval needed for
Oh, right.
resolutions, correct?
Thank you. Good point. Thank you. So, Ms. Bauer, 8B1.
All right, so I'm breaking these up. Okay. So for 8C1,
B1.
B.
what? B?
8B1.
You said C.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, that's weird. I pushed on B and it took me to C. Thank you. You still want, you want these broken up?
Is anyone requesting them to be broken up? No?
I'd like one broken out just so we can
Okay.
make sure we got the answer to our question from
Okay.
yesterday
Very
or
well.
Monday, whenever that was.
Okay. So again, 8B1, I make a motion to approve the contract with Fortis Cyber Advisory Services to perform penetration testing. The funding will be taken out of the technology budget.
Second. Second. All right.
Motion by Ms. Bauer, second by Mr. Lady. Discussion.
Yes, he did speak with our incoming technology director, and he was comfortable with and confident that the Fortis Cyber Advisory Services will be able to study the penetration test and give us valid data. They spoke
Yesterday.
yesterday.
Perfect.
Great. And just for the public's education, if you didn't catch it, that we had a concern the incoming IT director would want a different penetration test or whether this was a valid. So we asked the administration to reach out to make sure the incoming IT director wanted this company to perform a penetration. Happy to say he said yes. So, okay, no further discussion. Roll call vote?
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
So moving on to 8B. Oh, does that say 12? It's
Two and
supposed to say
three.
2.
2 and 3.
Should be 2 and 3. 2 is a recommendation, making a motion to approve the purchase of TransFinder Transportation. It's a routing software for professional services agreement to transfer the current bus routes to TransFinder. The item number 3 is a recommendation to, and a motion to approve the statement of work agreement with WellSpan Medical Group, which is to provide multiphasic blood screening for the employees of the district.
And I'll second it.
Motion by Ms. Bowers, second by Mr. Gelsinger. Any discussion?
So, I watched the meeting from Monday. I was stuck in traffic coming home from Erie while you guys were doing that. It was very pleasant. Just something to point out, I was watching, and there was a lot of discussion on the TransFinder transportation. I'm not against approving this to go through with it, especially to patch up our network. But I do want to just point out, if I'm hearing this right, if we don't purchase this now, we don't have to spend the $13,000 on them adding our bus routes. But we will have to continue with the current bus route, which will cost us $9,000. So we actually would be offering a savings of $4,000 if we waited on this. But again, then that, if I'm correct, that's what it sounded like. We would have to buy in again to bus, which would be $9,000.
Well, we definitely would have to keep the $9,000 bus pass that we have currently. The question is still outstanding if we'd be able to have
Brian.
Brian would have to enter the routes.
entering the routes or not.
Right.
I'm not certain about that. I said that there's a possibility. I don't know if that
Right.
possibility come into reality or
So
not.
we could save the 13, maybe if we entered all the routes ourselves.
Right.
I just wanted to throw it out there. I think that patching up our system is probably more important. And I'd actually think it would be frustrating to run both of them all year next year, where it'd be better to just do it now, run it
Right.
for a few months, and then move back to one for next year. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
And I did reach out to Mr. Hurrell after our meeting, and he did implement this at Littlestown. Not only did they research it, but they did in fact implement it. And he said that without a doubt, his team is ready to rock and roll as soon as you push the button on it. They're excited. So
Thank you for that.
Okay. Seeing no more discussion?
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
All right, moving on. 8C, Program Committee, Ms. Weaver.
Good evening. I'd like to make a motion to I'd like to, make a motion for the following recommendations. Items 8C, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Second.
Okay, great.
Motion by
Thank
Ms.
you.
Weaver, second by Mr. Smith.
So for item number 1, it's the recommendation for the final adoption of the Southwestern School District Special Education Plan, which was attached. Number 2 is a recommendation to approve the request from the high school orchestra for an overnight trip from April 17th through April 20th to attend the PMEA All-State Orchestra Conference. Number 3 is a recommendation to approve a contract for purchase student services with River Rock Academy for 2023-2024. Number 4 is a recommendation to approve the statement of work agreement between Southwestern School District and Hoffman Homes for Youth. And number 5 is to request a program committee meeting on May 13th at 5 p.m.
Can we just highlight why the program committee meeting for anyone who wants to?
Yes, thank you. The district administration will be presenting the board with some information regarding potential redistricting to ease overcrowding at West Manheim. So we'll have that for the board to review and then consider at a later date. Obviously, after the review, we'd like to put it out to the community for their review before any final vote would be made.
Okay.
It is minor, but it will impact some of the students.
Okay. Any other discussion related to items? Seeing none?
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
All right, and
I'll
Mr.
take it.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion for 8D1, recommendation to approve the Southwest High School capital project request to include payment of invoices totaling $1.5 million and some change.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gelsinger, second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Seeing none? Roll call vote?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
Over to Mr. Lady for
I'd like to
8E.
make a recommendation to approve 8E1, an expulsion agreement as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lady, second by Mr. Smith. We'll go roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 8E2 is a recommendation to approve a request for enrollment of a student that is outside the district that will be paying for tuition.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lady, second by Ms. Brennan. Any discussion? Seeing none? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no.
Okay, I'll make a recommendation to approve 8E3, request for the high school AP Gov class to use the library on Sundays. All Sunday stuff must be approved by the board.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lighty, second by Ms. Bauer. I would like to comment that they're category A, so no fees are required. Anyone else have a comment? If not, we could do a voice vote on this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries. All right, 8F1 is me, and that's recommendation to approve the final adoption of policy 216.2 student records, name, sex, gender identity.
Second.
I need I'll make the motion, and, okay, yes, so me for motion and Mr. Smith for second. Any discussion? I think we've discussed this. My position hasn't changed on the policy. I think it's irrespective of comments out in the community. To date, the ILC policy has not been legally successfully challenged and defeated in court. So there's your indication as to the legality to date on it. That's the only additional comment I would have. See no further comment? Oh, Mr. Smith.
I'll give a quick comment on it for a minute, if I may. This particular policy exists now because of the lack of policies, because of the lack of several policies. The current board president and myself, several years ago, warned about certain issues that were coming. It was ignored time and time again for years. This issue's coming, that issue's coming. We don't have a policy. We don't have a policy, leaves us liable to lawsuit for several reasons. I noticed recently that when I explain something, if it can't be twisted in the media, they don't report it. So I'll just say this again. This particular policy is because of the lack of policies. It allows for accommodations for students, for parents, pronoun usage, things like that. It also follows the law and the Constitution that the freedom of speech is illegal for compelled speech. Compelled speech is illegal under the state constitution and the federal U.S. Constitution. It also supports parental rights, that nothing will be done to children without parents' knowledge. So if somebody says in the media, they picked a word out and twisted it to whatever they wanted, read the policy for yourself. It's parental rights. It's protecting students. It is protecting everyone. It was the lack of a policy. It is to make sure everyone is protected. Every student, every parent, every taxpayer. So if there's ever a question, read the policy, talk to one of the board members, whatever you got to do. That's all I have on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Just one thing. I think the most common statement I've been hearing from the public about this is how if a child, basically that staff doesn't have to acknowledge children by the preferred pronoun, and that is not accurate. The way it's written is it gives them the ability to, if it goes against their beliefs, they do not have to. But there's also a caveat that it states that between the administrators, the teachers, and the children, they will all work hand in hand, which they should be doing that already, to find a compromise. It's not saying they can just disrespect the child and call them whatever they want to. It says that they will work hand in hand and to find a common ground. That's the way that policy, that portion of that policy was represented to us whenever it was presented to us.
Okay. Seeing no other comment, roll call vote.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
No.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes,
7 yes, 1 no.
motion carries. Moving on to 8G. Ms. Brennan.
Yes, the Mental Health and Wellness Committee, there is not much to report. We did have our first meeting this past Monday. It was pretty well attended. It was lengthy in the sense that we maxed out our time. And we will have our next Mental Health and Wellness Committee meeting, surprisingly agreed on a date and time real quick, on May 20th at 12 p.m. That's a Monday. I will just say that I appreciate everyone that did attend and listened. I will say this again. I said this Monday, and I'll probably keep saying this, that my goal for the Mental Health and Wellness Committee is to learn and understand, to be able to find solutions or help, or again, just simply allow parents, community, other staff, other admin to understand that realm. Mental health is not tangible. Mental health is not physical. I can't really give you something and you understand what it is in the mental health world. So it's pretty much a learning process for a lot of people, probably most. So that is my goal as a overall arching goal for the committee. So
Okay. And seeing no other comment, we'll go on to negotiations. Ms. Gelsinger.
Just as a reminder, all the board members, the next meeting, we'll probably put Act 93 on for final approval. You already received all that paperwork a month ago, so dig it out from the dark hole that you probably put it in. And if you have any questions about that, just as a reminder, we need to schedule an executive session to discuss that stuff before the next meeting. So if you have any questions for that, let me know so we can make sure we get an executive session on the schedule.
Okay. Safety Committee, that's me. I have no report. Any other board considerations? 8J? Seeing none. 9, a recommendation to approve the final adoption of policy 123.1, sex-based distinctions in athletic. That's proposed to go on the agenda for April 24th. So that's just an indication of where that's going to go. And at this point, we'll go to 10, planning discussion budget.
Item
Oh.
9, just another addition for the
Yes,
next agenda would be final approval of Act 93.
correct. Okay, now Mr. Mummer.
So as for budget discussion. As for budget discussion, We have a meeting scheduled next Monday at 6:30 to go over the budget as well. At this point in time, be happy to answer questions or take additional requests for information that you'd like us to bring to the board. Trying to think if there's anything else I have. I don't have anything else to present other than what we had already presented as far as the list of proposed budget cuts at the last meeting a couple meetings ago. So are there any other items of information that you'd like us to bring back to you or to have prepared for Monday night? We can do that. Or do you have any questions now that we can try to answer?
Ms.
Of
Smith?
the proposed cuts, musical instruments wasn't on that list, was it?
No, that was down below that line.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure that
That was an
wasn't-
optional one. that
I
we
wanted to
could-
make sure that wasn't there, because we definitely don't want any cuts on that as prices continue to increase
Sure.
on things like that, especially musical instruments. And our music
Yeah, I'm pretty
program
sure we
is
clarified
very
that
important.
We're not including that.
Yeah.
The one that's still in question is the summer program, I think.
Some-
Yes. Yes, that is something is in question. At the last meeting, there was a question raised about whether or not the district could charge a fee for that program. I would answer that question and say yes. We charge fees for other programs that we have in the district, most notably Behind the Wheel for Driver's Education. So we could charge a fee. The question that I would ask the board is if there's an interest in funding any part of the program or not funding any part of the program. If it's not, and it's simple math as far as I'm concerned, we just take that amount that we need to generate, the $24,000, and divide it by the estimated number of students that we'd have in the program. And that's what we'd end up charging,
It's like $50.
like 240. We have about 100 kids that are in the program.
So I'd ask to that regard, if we could come up with maybe two suggestions. One would be if we funded what we did in the past and then charged the fee for the increase, what that would look like according to
that.
the number of students attending. That,
That's what I was saying. So we increased $10,000, and my understanding was that we had 200 students. So that's $50 a person is what it would cost
for the entire program.
for the additional,
For the increase.
for the
Right.
increase, yeah, only for the increase. Which I don't know that, I think that seems like a little much.
So I think the numbers are probably closer to 100, not 200 students. But again, we can certainly get those numbers for you. That's not a problem.
And if you have any other ways that you think it's appropriate to split up, you've been doing the numbers way longer than we have. If you have other suggestions on how we could fiscally,
I don't have any suggestions regarding that. I mean, it's really up to the board as to what direction you wish to provide.
okay.
And we can certainly go whichever way the board goes.
So let me just throw some math at you guys. If we do this, first of all, we're assuming 100 kids are going to sign up at that rate. If that number drops, the enrollment cost goes up for the people that do agree.
That's correct.
It's 2 hours per day at a location. Anybody who's ever paid a babysitter will tell you that a good babysitter, if you divide $240, if we're doing the full amount, not just the raise, divided by the amount of time, divided by the amount of weeks, you could hire a really great college kid to come and watch your kids for 2 hours a week in your home without having to transport them. I believe if we charge, which is our right to do, we will kill this program. So, and if we can't afford if we choose not to afford the program, then that's a vote and that happens. But if we create these numbers and we put it out there and then 50 kids sign up, are we going to walk back to those 50 families and then be like, hey, A, you have to pay more, or B, sorry, we canceled it? Because at that point, they've also banked on that for their summer. So while it's a viable option moving forward to look into a third party even hosting this program, it is April 10th. We have a month and a half until school's out. So I don't know if we're just trying to keep a failing program alive, or if we take a gap year and attempt to come in hard with a better plan next year. Because I see it being much more expensive when the numbers drop. I think part of the draw was that it was free. a large part of the draw.
And
I
to your
think.
point, so if we agree to charge a nominal rate and we don't get the enrollment, I think that's where we flex for the flex year and say we carry the rest to allow the time frame to adjust. I think that would be a reasonable consideration possibly, is if there are less people that sign up, maybe the district could absorb that, considering this is the year that it's ending, and to put a preparation in place to keep it alive. To your point, though, maybe we should look at what is the per hour cost for babysitting and calculate that way in what we would charge to make it comparable. Can anyone suggest what a typical per hour rate is?
I think that is.
I would just like to make a couple comments. I agree with just about everything you said. But as a business owner and being a parent that sends my daughter to camps like this during the summer, we pay $200 to $400 for 1 week for half days. So to ask these parents to pay $50 or $60 would not be that much. And if the enrollment drops, as a business owner, if the summer camp enrollment drops in my business, the first thing I do is drop my staff from 3 to 2. So we're not signing contracts with these staff members. As horrible as that would be the first thing to go, would be some of the staff. And that sucks, but if you want to have the program, then that's one of the things that we potentially do. The one thing I definitely disagree with, it's not free. The taxpayers are paying for it. That's the thing I disagree with. It's free to the parents that are sending their children there, but we are not babysitters for the summer.
Thank you, Mr. Gelsinger. I'm opposed to any school district funding for this program. That's my
Jeff?
position.
Would we also then need to go back to the other donors who are responsible for funding to let them know that we've changed the structure of the program?
The other funding donors would be the townships, and we probably would at least alert them to it. As I see it, Mr. Gelsinger, you're exactly right. We would look at first reducing staff. We also probably would look at reducing locations, which may further exacerbate the less number of students participating, because if we cut 2 of the locations, it may be difficult for parents to get them there. So to answer your question, I'm not sure what the townships would do, if they would still fund the program. Obviously, if they fund the program, that's what we're basing the numbers on anyway. If they choose not to fund the program because we've decided not to have it in their township, then that would obviously affect the total overall budget for the program. Again, the program itself, when you're looking at the total, it's a relatively small number, the subset. So even if you're off a little bit, I don't think it's going to be that significant. But I would reach back out to them, and we can do that.
I just want to make it clear, I support this program, but what I don't support is the constant ballooning of the cost. And we honestly can't sit here and say we know for a fact that even the numbers that were presented to us is the maximum amount that this is going to cost us.
Correct.
So we as a board need to say, are we willing to spend this amount? Because if we say we're going to support it, we don't know what that cost is going to be. And I'm willing to put something out there, but I'm not willing to put everything out there, just from my opinion.
If I can clarify the attendance, I found my notes from that meeting. It says that about 24 students at 4 different locations came per day. So that's about 100. That was the attendance per day. The people that signed up, 2021 was 162, 2022 was 227, and 2023 was 239. So it's slightly over 200 signups.
So the question becomes, I guess, do you charge based on signups or who actually shows up? Because
Well, if
I
you're
can tell you,
signing up, we're
when you look at
seeing 50 hours
when you
for
look at
who
the
signs up.
averages, the hundreds who comes.
Yeah.
It's not 200. I mean, we can show you the data back, showing you the actual, because we have that
let's
same.
agree with that. That's what 24 per, and then the one was only, it was only 3 locations, but it was still only 24 a day at each location. So that was only 75.
Yeah, but I think it's important to make the distinction, though, that the structure of the program, you can't compare all those years because the structure has changed
That's true.
significantly.
Absolutely.
in having it in multiple locations as opposed to only having it in one and rotating and having it all day and then cutting it back to half day and then having it as just 2 hours. It's comparing apples to avocados.
That's a good one. I like that. The avocados.
Okay, so we can discuss it further at the budget meeting.
We can.
That's- you know, I think you've got good direction there.
Right.
I do want to add for budget also, any donations that the district's making with taxpayer money, I want an accounting of that for cut. As far as I'm concerned, the district should not be donating taxpayer money to anyone on their behalf. Taxpayers can do that themselves, so I'd like to see all donations we're doing.
And we've already cut that. That was the library. Well, I shouldn't say that. We also have the fire department that actually attends our football games, the ambulance service.
So
we're
we pseudo get a service out of that.
We sort of do.
Yeah.
It was 2 donations that were very small to ambulance and fire, I think.
Right.
That
Yeah.
we got something from, so.
Right.
Yeah. The only other donation we
I
make
think
is
it was
to the music.
$500.
The only other donation we make is to the Music Booster Club, and that was based on a contractual arrangement we had with them whenever we had, the district had the band trailer. And it got to the point where that was done. It was, we're gonna trash it. And so in exchange for them buying the band trailer and taking over that responsibility, we agreed to give them $750 a year to help cover the cost of the insurance for that band trailer and for the licensing, the annual inspection and stuff like that. So that was something we started 5, 7, 8 years ago,
Yeah.
and we've been continuing to do that.
But isn't it important to recognize that the district owns potentially some instruments that are being moved
Correct.
in that vehicle? So we're protecting our own investments?
Well, not only that, but again, it actually was a cost savings to the district because we no longer had to actually own that trailer. And since at that time, they went out and bought a brand new trailer, that would have been a pretty expensive item for the district to purchase. And we did not purchase that, they did. But those are the only, in the library, those are the only ones we have. So it's not that much. So in the community, well, we can talk about that next week.
And just so because we're making the comparisons, as far as the library goes, I did very clearly ask, do we have any interaction with them at all? And the answer was no. So that's the distinction I'd make between those other donations and the library. So, thank you. Moving on to 11, visitors. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
I
Beard.
had one question for Mr. Mummer on the driver's ed, the
Mhm.
spreadsheet you had previously given us. There's cost of the program minus student fees. I thought you had maybe mentioned that this does not include the salary and benefits
That's correct.
of the person. So do we have a person who is a full-time driver's ed
Instructor.
instructor?
I thought you said that they were also a teacher. Did I
It is a
misunderstand
teacher.
that?
Phys ed teachers.
It is a teacher.
It's a teacher who's also doing this as the added service.
And the cost factor you see in there is the hourly cost when we pay them for doing it over the summer months. Because we actually hire another person to help in the summer that they're paid on an hourly basis. So when you see the cost for the behind the wheel aspect, the teacher cost is not part of that because that's a sunk cost in my mind. We're paying for that teacher to teach that year.
Right.
And that's for the in the classroom portion of the driver's education. I'm not the educators. I could defer to them about that aspect of it. But for the behind the wheel portion, we pay them on an hourly basis. We have 2 in the summer. We have 2 vehicles we rent in the summer. And you can see what we charge. We charge $275 for that. It's going to go up to $300 on July 1st of 2025. It was 2 years ago, it was $50. We weren't getting a lot of money from the state, so we switched it up to $250. And then, like I said, it went up to $275 in 22 or 23, and now it's going up in 25. July 1st of 25, it's going up to $300 a student. I think that answers your question.
Thank you.
Driver's ed required.
No.
It's not required, okay. That's
In
why
the,
this-
in the 10th grade course, in the 10th grade health course, essentially, it's called safety education. There is a component in the curriculum related to driver's education. It's sort of it's not the behind the wheel part of it. It's sort of the understanding of the legal side of driving. But it's a part of the curriculum that is separate. Nobody has to do the behind the wheel. That's an extension of that. But every student would at least go through the 10th grade course. That would be that safety education course.
Does the state offset any cost for driver's education?
I don't think
It,
so.
it does if you don't charge too much money. They allow you to charge a lab fee of up to $50 per student, which we did for years, and the state would pay us about $9,000 in revenues. Well, we were losing money. And at a point in time, several years ago, we said, okay, this doesn't make a lot of sense to us. If you go out in the private sector to have your child learn the behind wheel sector, you're going to be paying several $100s. And so we changed at that point in time and said, we're not going to take state funding. We'll charge $250 so we can cover our costs, which we did. And we are.
Yeah, because in the motorcycle world in Pennsylvania, like when you get a permit for $5, no matter who it is, those $5 goes into a fund for the state of Pennsylvania, and they pay for any motorcycle training in the state. So if you go in and sign up, anybody that has a Pennsylvania license can take free motorcycle training in the state of Pennsylvania.
Harley funded some of that too.
Mhm.
So the classes that we offer in school, do they incur a insurance savings like the driver's ed or not at all?
Right, just the behind the wheel part.
Okay.
The class, it doesn't.
Right, so because I've had kids go through all this already. My two oldest, I did pay for that lovely summer. Wasn't quite that much. It was like 200 or whatever it was. Well worth the money. And they take their driver's actual license test at the end. That's also well worth the money. But you do get, your insurance gets a deduction. You also get a deduction, well, for the class, you get a deduction if you do the, like, however many hours of driving, whatever that is, I don't remember, the log. So there's those deductions, not from the school class, because my son took that school class, I think last year, or yeah, so I guess it was in the fall semester. But that summer or that course that we're talking about is well worth the money. But it's not mandatory. I did it because to save my sanity and also for the insurance breaks, because insuring a new driver is super fun. So
Okay, unless we have any other budget discussion items, I think we're going to move on to visitors. So we had 2 remaining signups not on agenda. Miss Sylvia Shoemaker.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Shoemaker. I'm a taxpayer and have a grandchild in the district. I normally just sit here and listen, but I can't anymore. To listen to the rhetoric in the news and the discussions, it's too much. These meetings are not being reported correctly. As Mr. Smith said, if the previous board would have put policy in place, we would not be here like we are now. This community has become so divisive, and it doesn't need to be. Nobody likes budget cuts. They're never fun. But I'd rather see the library be cut and keep the programs in our school. Our tax dollars from our townships are going to fund the library. Our school tax dollars should stay in the district. Our school taxes are already outrageous. We're paying for an excessive high school renovation, which was approved by a previous board. And I remember a meeting where Mr. Gelazella questioned the cost and if we could get an itemization of the costs. And he was told by a former board member, that's not how it works. They just give us a price and we roll with it. You know, maybe that's why our school taxes are the way we are. I appreciate you asking questions, doing your research, and trying to cut costs wherever necessary. The school board does represent all students, parents, and taxpayers. That being said, when do the rights of a select minority supersede the rights of the majority? If anyone's rights were violated, it was the young man who was uncomfortable with someone of another gender changing in the locker room when he was told he could change elsewhere. This school board was voted in by an overwhelming majority. As much as some in the room might not like it, our taxpayers have spoken. I don't care what race or gender you are or proclaim to be. We are all human. What I take offense to is the constant push of an agenda in our schools. These children do not grow up hating each other, but the constant focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion is having a reverse effect. Many companies are doing away with their DEI programs. I found it particularly disturbing to hear that the YWCA is sending hate-filled emails to our board. This is an organization that says they promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity, among other things. It is particularly disturbing since this organization has a former board member on their board of directors and several former and current school district employees involved in their committees. I find it appalling that they would host a diversity and inclusion in the classroom workshop for educators and refuse to allow one of our school board members to attend. As was said in a previous meeting, there's one in every crowd. It has become obvious that there is a group of former and current school district employees that are working against our school board to do whatever they can to bring them down. Can't we work together to better education for our children rather than constantly focus on dividing us?
Thank you, Ms. Shoemaker. Mr. Carr.
Hello, Stephen Carr, Manhattan Township. At the last mental health committee meeting, Dr. Hom said your assault might be different than yours. Mr. President, I believe you're being lawyered here. Under the Black's Law of Dictionary, assault, the threat or use of force on another that causes that person to have a reasonable apprehension of imminent harmful or offensive contact. The act of putting another person in reasonable fear or apprehension of an immediate battery by means of an act amounting to an attempt to threat or commit battery. Was there fear? Yes. That little girl was afraid to go to school, is afraid to use the bathroom because a boy assaulted her in the bathroom. Was there contact? Yes. The boy was grabbing and holding her against the wall. So this defines and matches the exact definition of assault from Black's Law Dictionary. And there was no, and she went to the assistant principal, and she said, and to the teacher, and the teacher said that she should sit next to the to the victim and play games with that. If that's not extended drama, I don't know what is. That's like going to school with your rapist if you've ever been raped before. Would you like that? No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Carr. And that is the entirety of people who signed up. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Dina Versa. I'm a student here at Southwestern, and I wanted to talk about the policy.
I'm sorry, did you get the name?
First name again?
Dean Aversa.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
It's okay. I wanted to talk about the policy 216.2, and I know that I believe it was Mr. Gelsinger that said this has already been in place because of a lack of policy. I think that whether or not there was, even though there was a lack of policy, it doesn't really give the board an excuse in the media if it's not good. Because these decisions against LGBTQ students, they've been in the name of giving parents rights and decisions. And, I'm for that, but, that has been made almost exclusively against a very small minority within our school district. And it doesn't really sit right with me. And I really think that a teacher being able to respect a student's identity and emotions really goes a long way. It doesn't go unappreciated for these people. It really doesn't. And I think, again, what Mr. Gelsinger said, there is no for or against your beliefs when talking about these students. Ignoring a student's emotions and identity is inherently disrespectful. It's seen as disrespectful. And, and it, excuse me, trying to find the words here. For a teacher that would respect a student's identity builds a relationship between that student and the teacher. It goes a long way, and I think giving the teachers the option is strange, definitely, and I think giving, parents the final say, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I just worry that it would suppress some students that wish to be called by a certain name or pronouns. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Rebecca Sims. My son's at Park Hills. I'm a taxpayer. One, I wanted to thank Mr. Galazelia for responding to my email that I noted he hadn't responded to at the last meeting. I have since received your email, and I do appreciate your time in responding. I wanted to say that there's been a lot of talk about the reason why this policy regarding trans students has been put into effect is because the board was warned that if there wasn't a policy, there will be legal action. And I think it's interesting to note that some of the people who now sit on the board were those same people suggesting that there would be legal action, implying that maybe it was them that would be doing the legal action. I think there is going to be legal action one way or the other, and the question becomes whose side will win out. And it makes me sad because I don't feel like the school board is being used to its proper purpose. When I hear about the policy changes that some of you have suggested, and I will say some because I respect the request to not lump you all as one unit. I think that the school board, instead of, again, looking to the needs of our individual students, listening to the recommendations of their employees, the administration, who are trained to be doing these things, in many cases, individuals who have masters and PhDs in education and in administration. Instead of doing that, they're using our school board as a tool to enact state and federal change. And as a taxpayer in the system, I don't think that that's right. I think that we need to be looking directly at what the parents are actually worried about. And again, as I noted last time, when I speak to other parents in the school district, which I have the opportunity to do as a former member of the PTA and an active member of the Park Hills community, they're not worried about the trans issue. They're not worried, the majority of them are not worried about the books that their children have access to. We talk about access, and my child's allowed to bring whatever book to school. Well, there's no saying that my child's not going to hand your child a book because that's what kids do, right? So unless we're going to police every single book that ever comes into the school, mandating the teacher libraries is just bureaucracy. And again, that goes back to just pulling books out of the hands of our children, which I will tell you, a majority of parents in the district do not agree with. The parents that I speak to, again, are worried about vaping in the middle school bathroom. They're worried about bullying. They're actually worried about the politicizing of these issues, creating an atmosphere in both the middle school and the high school of bullying and division between our students, further division. And that's not what we want as parents. We want our children to grow up and respect each other, no matter what their creed, their race, or their identity is. The bottom line is it's about actions. It's about kindness. And I just don't understand how be kind and mind your business has become a political statement and has become what I see as the antithesis to what some of your policies are looking toward. So that's my concern. Also, we were talking about the summer program, And when my son was in kindergarten, my husband was unemployed. He had a bout of unemployment, which was very hard for our family. My husband's always been a very hard worker, and he's very well employed now. But there was a time where we could not afford a summer program like your family could, Mr. Gelsinger. We couldn't afford to send our son to a program. And the only time that I got to go grocery shopping or go to the doctors or do anything during those summer's months was because you and this school district allowed for that summer program. And I know that many families can afford summer programs, and they do. They want their children to be enriched. But we serve all families and all children here, and there are families who really rely on this program, at least 100 of them. So I would beg you to reconsider, at least for now, and then maybe shop more affordable programs for the next time. Thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am.
Denise Bunty, and I'll put that down. You know that I always want to pray, and the reason why I pray is because I feel we really need it right now. So can we start, please? Okay. In the name of Jesus, we take authority over the demon powers that is deluding minds and corrupting government and bringing evil to our city. I stand against it by the blood of Christ, the power of the word of God, and I demand it to leave in the word of God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Peyton Littlejohn. I'm a student. There's a couple things. I'd like to remind Mr. Gelsinger that it was you who once said at a meeting about raising school lunch prices, that could potentially take food out of children's mouth. While you are a business owner, you may be able to afford $50 or $60, but we are Southwestern. We were once a district of people who were of low income, who were farmers, and we made this district for those people. And those people may not be able to afford $50 for a summer camp versus $50 for groceries for their numerous children. I don't think it's right to say, well, they can afford it. Some people really can't, and some people really need that program. That is really helpful to a lot of people. And that's coming from an outsider, someone who didn't experience that program. I've spoken about this before, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I will speak about it until I am blue in the face because I have suffered as a member of this district due to a lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion, a lack of exposure to people who are of diverse racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds. I have suffered from that, and I will not let my fellow students suffer from that as well. It is so important to expose children to different backgrounds because that's how we get to know each other. I was talking to Dr. Friel, and he asked me if I was going into politics. I am not. I'm actually going to major in sociology because sociology gives nuance and it gives meaning to political science. We cannot legislate and expect it to be practically applicable. I'm sorry, y'all, I got a fear of bees. We can't expect it to be practical if we have no sociological knowledge or knowledge of the people and the behaviors in our community. And I think you guys need to keep that in mind when you legislate for us. I don't see myself reflected in this board. I don't see an African American member. I don't see you guys come off very similar. I don't see myself. So I need you guys to make me feel reflected in this board. I need to feel like you understand where I'm coming from because I am sick of living in a place and going to school where I don't feel like I can relate to people or I don't feel like people understand me. So I am asking you guys respectfully to make me and other students feel reflected in this board and make us feel like we have a place in this district. Thank you.
Anyone else? So you already, I'm sorry, we have one prescribed rule and that you can only take the mic once. I'm sorry, ma'am. It's all right. Didn't know. Anyone else? Okay. Does anyone want to comment?
Can I,
Yep.
can I comment?
Yep. Okay. We'll give
And
you-
I never comment,
Go ahead.
but I would like to, and I even took notes. So, and I'm sorry, I did not catch your name. Dean. Okay. So first, I simply just want to say that I want you to know that I could feel what you were saying. And by that, I mean, I could see the emotion in the way you were talking. So all I wanted to say was, I hear you. And that we as a whole in this room, not necessarily us here, but just as a whole, we may not agree with everything, and that's okay. I think that people in here, people out there, that they think disagreeing is bad. It's not. We're not all going to agree on everything, and it's okay. I guess maybe how people come across, maybe people how vocalize what they think and say and disagree with, maybe that should be better communicated. Maybe that would be better received. But I did hear the emotion in your voice. So I just want to tell you that I heard you. With Miss Sims, I know you talked about, you would prefer to focus on the bullying and the vaping. There you go. The bullying and the vaping. So I also want to let you know that that is a focus. Maybe not so much talked about lately or as a whole in the meetings, but I can promise you that majority of us here, that has actually been in the forefront in our heads for years, actually, before we were even on the board. I promise you that. It may not have been so much as, like I said, discussed so much in meetings, but I can promise you that's one of the reasons why my interest in meeting with the people with RAMPA. It was because of the drugs, the alcohol, all that is to lessen these things happening in the school. So I wanted to say that at least for you, that is something we do think about, and that has been a worry and a priority in our heads for years. And it's not falling on deaf ears, and it's not being focused on. But I did want to say that I actually agree with something you said, because, and maybe I'm the minority here, I actually don't think we should charge for the summer program. My kids never did that. My kids never partook in that. But I can tell you, if they had, and if I had elementary school kids right now, I couldn't afford the $50. That is, my budget is razor thin, probably in the negatives half the time. There is no way I could afford that. And I personally, if I had an elementary school kid right now, would not see it as a babysitting. I would see it as, this is a great program for kids to be able to get out and engage during the summer when they're not in school. So that's how I would see it. So for me, I do agree with you there. And I just wanted to let you know and say that out loud. And then for Miss Little John, I think, and I think this is actually as a whole for everyone, just so you know, I'm Spanish. My parents were not from this country. So I think that diversity as a whole, the word, I think it's taken out of context as a whole, not just here in this room. I think as a whole in the United States and society. I think that the way it's being perceived is not how it really is. And when I think of diversity, I don't think of the diversity that society is pushing upon us right now. I think of it as, I'm bilingual. I'm Hispanic. I cook Spanish food. My parents are from 2 different Spanish countries. I feel I'm pretty diverse. Most people don't know that. And why? Because I've been told I don't look Spanish. So I get it. Because they're like, you're not Spanish, you don't look it. That's pretty ignorant comment. So that's just kind of what I want to say as far as like the diversity word. I think there is probably more diversity than we think, just because our perception of what the word diversity means is different, and how society has made it seem to be when it's not, if that makes sense. But I just wanted to say that too.
Gelsinger.
Sure. Since my name got thrown under the bus a couple times, I'm a very matter-of-fact kind of person. So first of all, Ashley, I know how much it sucks that you can't go back up there and speak again. So I would remind you and any other student that our emails are on the website. Feel free, thoughts in your mind tonight, go home and email us because we will read it. I promise you that. I think some of our students are the best speakers we have come up to the microphone. Dean, I'm going to have to correct you on something tonight that you said to me. Again, I respect the fact that you have the strength and the ability to walk up there, and I did not say that there was a lack of policy. That is a fact. Go back and watch a video. The man sitting beside me said that. I'm going to throw him under the bus. Okay? What I said was in reference to Mrs. Anderson, I believe, was that policy 200 has been in existence since 2016. The other thing I said was policy 216 protects the teachers a little bit. So I would challenge you, because this isn't a back and forth, we're not allowed to do that. But I would challenge you to go home tonight and think about, because you made this statement, and I quoted you, giving teachers the privilege is strange. That's exactly what you said at that microphone. So does the teachers, and this is my question to you, rhetorical, does the teachers have rights if it goes against their personal beliefs? So that's something for you to think about tonight. The other thing, Peyton, again, I respect the fact you walk up there. I support the summer program. What I do not support is putting it on the backs of our taxpayers without an unknown amount of money. The man sitting 3 chairs down from me doesn't like unknown amounts of money either. We need to have clear-cut numbers. If they walked in here and said it was going to cost our taxpayers $10,000, I'd vote yes right now. But the problem is the numbers are unknown. We had an unexpected add of a nurse. There's also unexpected additions if there's special needs kids that get added. And we don't know that until those enrollments start coming in. So I will not vote. I'd rather put out my own personal money and fund a grant for kids to go that can't pay for it. And I would challenge the Recreation Commission to look at potentials for that. You know, there's businesses that would pay to help those kind of kids that fit in that realm. But we have to get to that without putting an undue tax burden on our taxpayers. That's why I stand the way I do on that. I hope I made that clear.
Mr. Smith.
I'll add a few things. For years, all the board members here, including Mr. Beard, for years, listened, talked to students, parents, taxpayers, teachers, administrators. Listen. Before any of us decided to run an election, it was 70% listening. Then after that is 15% action. And then guess what's after that? 15% follow through. So a lot of the listening that we did for years, we're still listening to. We're still listening to. And it doesn't matter how much gaslighting happens. We're still listening. We're listening to everybody. And we're trying to make sure everybody is protected. And if we look at Supreme Court jurisprudence over the last 40 years, they have consistently ruled that the 14th Amendment protects the fundamental right of parents to direct the upbringing of their children. That is the law of the land under the Constitution. Every single board member sitting here has sworn an oath to uphold, defend, and protect the Constitution of the United States and of Pennsylvania. So any notion that we're not following the law or we're careless of the law, it's nonsense. Don't believe that. Whoever's telling you that, challenge them. Because this board here listens more than they speak, more than they act. And follow-up comes after every action. I can promise you that. And like Keith said, our emails are on the website. You can email any of us. And when I respond to emails, usually the same day, my cell phone number is always on there too, because that's on my signature line. Anybody can call me at any time. Anybody can come to cookouts that we have all summer long. And you want to see diversity, my kids are biracial. So whoever's spreading all these things, it's nonsense. Diversity is everywhere around us. This board has diverse life experiences. Everybody in this room has diverse life experiences. It doesn't matter what your background is or where you're from. We all have diverse experiences. That is true diversity. When we talk about equity, equity is nonsense. Equality is equal opportunity, and that is what we all have in this country. Equity has been perverted to be political as equal outcomes. And in a teaching setting, we cannot have equity because then we would not have any gifted programs because we would have equal outcomes. We cannot do that. Equity cannot be implemented as a political ideology in society. Diversity is all around us, yes. Equity is nonsense. Equality is what this country is about. Inclusion, I don't like hearing inclusion from people that exclude people from things. So that's the way I see that. Communication. Everybody lacks perspective because of communication. Perspective is what everybody lacks, even B. So I would say, talk to people. I'd rather be on that side. I don't want to be sitting here. I'm not better than anybody, right? But we listened and we put in hard work. And I know last year I knocked on over 5,000 doors myself, over 5,000. This is a volunteer job. Myself, I know the board president and several others, put 20 to 30 hours a week into the school district. Listening, 70% listening. Listening is more important than talking. Please keep that in mind. We all have to work together for all the children, every single one of them. So keep that in mind. Positivity grows into more positivity. Negativity does not. It takes you into the gutter. So let's stay positive.
I'm going to take the last comment. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
So I do want to thank everybody that came up to speak tonight. I do appreciate, and like I said, or like Keith said, some of our students, I love coming to hear some of your perspectives. And I appreciate you guys coming to the meetings. I wanted to add on for Dean. I do appreciate that your recognition that parents should have rights. I do want to address, though, that the way the policy is set up, it is geared towards respecting pronouns. But as was noted, we do have to respect people's freedom of speech. The way it's written is not to promote teachers to not do it. It's to encourage teachers to relate to students and do it. But there are some incidents, I think we both know, that some people just do not feel, for whatever reason, personal reasons, that they can call a boy she. And that would be compelled speech if we required that. So as a board, we cannot require that. But we are encouraging people, and teachers especially, to use the pronouns that are preferred. And I think most of them will. We just make a small carve out that, if that offends, or if there's a reason that they don't, and the accommodations are, you can go last name, there's other things, but we've made it clear that you can't violate that. So if there is a person that says, I want to be called this, and the parent agrees, the teacher can't do the opposite of that. They have to find a way around it. So I think that was a good middle ground. As far as Ms. Sims, we've had a couple people come up and say, hey, why are you focusing on this? Why are you focusing on that? And I think that this board walks and chews gum all the time. That's why our meetings are 5 hours long. And we are addressing vapes, and we are addressing drug and alcohol. We're spending extra money putting vape sensors in bathrooms and saying we're doing a lot of those other things as well. And I think one of the reasons why we put so much time, especially Mr. Gelozella puts so much time in, is because we are really trying to cover all of the issues. Not that we'll get them all. There's some other ones we have to put to the wayside and hopefully get to them later. But again, you guys know these meetings run long because we are really trying to address a lot of those. And finally, I hate to go here because I know this might not be popular, but I think the biggest problem with DEI is exactly where you went. The problem is because the focus has been made racial, and it's not. It shouldn't be. I am proud of the diversity on this board. We have military, we have business management, we have small businesses, we have different backgrounds as far as parenting, and it comes through in our discussion. I mean, I've been attending school board meetings for a long time, and there was no discussion up here. We discuss things at length, and we don't always agree. And I think that speaks to our diversity. And I think that the fact that all you see is our skin color up here and you don't feel represented, I think that's sad. So I do appreciate you speaking, though. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? All right, so I'm going to conclude with my comments. I have to apologize to Ms. Anderson. I was not able to hold a straight face when I got challenged on transparency. What's occurring right now, when I sat in your seats and during the COVID years with the masking and the virtual education, the board simply voted, enacted, and left. They let people comment, they didn't respond, and they said, thank you, goodbye. And I think that's a travesty. That's why we instituted, after public comment, allowing your elected officials to give you an idea of their thoughts so you can understand and respond and challenge. That's proper dialogue. We also made sure to insert live stream and retain live stream indefinitely so you can see exactly what we're saying and what we're doing up here. So as far as the challenge to transparency, respectfully, this board is way more transparent than it has been. We have appropriate discussion. To the bullying and vaping, we are looking right now.
Sorry, a bee was landing on my head.
Oh.
I was gonna smash him. I didn't want to offend anybody. Thanks, Kirby.
That was for you, Miss Little John.
Kirby saved my life. Look at that Army guy saving my life.
As far as the discussion, right? We come from different sides of issues. Discussion is important, okay? We run in groups where our groups say one thing and another group says something else. This discussion is important, that we listen to each other, okay? That's what's occurring here. So when we hear from that you say, when my friends say this, well, our friends say that, right? Both groups have a valid opinion, right? The safest way to conduct this school's business is to keep it at the behest of the parent who is in charge of their child. Because we're going to have a parent that disagrees with another parent on how to do that. If we put it in the hands of a parent to decide what's best for their children, we serve all the parents and all the kids. When we start saying you have to do this because another group feels that, that's where we go run afoul. When we put it in the hands of parents to decide for their own children, we find the most moderate answer that serves everyone in our district. And that, to that point, the reason this board has been as outspoken against DEI is because DEI does the opposite. It accentuates our differences, and it teaches students to look for, am I represented here? We are all human. We're all going to have a discussion. Just because I look different than you does not mean I'm not listening to you. So don't be fooled into being trained to look for our differences. We should have that discussion. I very much appreciate the discussion we have. I think you're very well spoken, and you think and you analyze everything, and that's beautiful. We need to have more of that. So please don't let that DEI component that wants to accentuate our differences, refresh our disdain, train you to look for our differences. We need to look for our similarities. That's where I have a problem with DEI. And I'll just leave it at that.
This is a record. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion so moved, adjourned.